Hello, welcome to Camera Chat number 2. Today we're going to be talking with two talented cinematographers about the A7S III and how you can rig it out to be like a cinema camera effectively. We're going to be speaking with Walter, the Balter, and also Justin Edelman, the cinematographers from America. Walter the Balters is from LA, and Justin Edelman is from San Diego. So yeah, really great to have them both on the show. We're going to be talking about all things A7S III, rigging it out, FX6, FX9, and the whole Sony lineup. So we're going to bring in Justin now, who's calling in from San Diego. First time using this streaming software, so here you are. Hey Justin, how you doing?
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, what time is it there over there?
It's 7 o'clock in the morning. What time is it there?
It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so I really appreciate you getting up early and kind of sharing your experience with us.
Sure.
Yeah,
No
so
problem.
just to kick things off, yeah. Do you want to just tell people a little bit about the work you do and kind of how the A7S III has slotted into, the kind of work that you do?
Sure. Let's see. I do a lot of kind of sports journalism stuff. Been working on documentaries. I do a lot of corporate films, and lately, because of the pandemic, I've been building up a YouTube channel, which has been an interesting experience. And a lot of the stuff that I do kind of requires a versatility in tools. So, when we can, we shoot with the bigger cameras. But obviously, there are situations where we really need something that's small, can pack a nice punch with image, and low light is also extremely key. So that's where sort of the A7S III has now kind of slotted itself. Lately, for us, though, I haven't been doing a lot of the at sea type of documentary work, so haven't needed it for that. But we have a YouTube channel, and we use the A7S III as our gimbal camera, and it's especially useful because it shoots 60 frames per second, 4K, and beautiful image, right? So that's kind of in a nutshell what we're doing with it right now.
Okay, great. And how have you kind of rigged out the A7S III to kind of, because we know that the features of the A7S III are pretty good. They're pretty much the same as the FX6. But how have you kind of rigged out the A7S III to make it more of like a cinema camera with kind of a bigger battery, maybe some XLR inputs, extra handles, just things like that? How have you kind of added to the A7S to make it into almost like a cinema rig?
I mean, truthfully, we haven't. I just bought a little cage for it because it is nice to be able to have a couple attachment points. But for us, we're not so worried about getting like the ND filter on there to make sure that the shutter speed is low, and that doesn't really matter for what we're doing right now because of the fact that it's just for YouTube and we're not doing cinema stuff. And when I go out to sea and I'm doing a documentary, again, it kind of doesn't really matter because really it's the subject that we're trying to capture, and that camera, even at a higher frame or even at a higher shutter speed, it looks really good. It's still very cinematic. So the truth is, I haven't really built up my A7S III to be a more cinematic rig, but I have an A7S II that we did, bought a tilted cage for. That battery was really bad on the A7S
Yeah,
II.
of course.
So we got a V-Lock with the dummy battery that goes inside, and 15 millimeter rods and all that stuff that kind of allowed us to build it up, put a matte box on it, and ND.
So I guess what you're saying for your use case, you're not so much worried about getting that kind of strict quote unquote cinematic image where you're kind of getting the 180 degree shutter rule. You're kind of more focused on getting the shot because it's quite fast paced. Is that right?
Yeah, and with documentary, a lot of the time it's like pointing the camera at the right time that's the key, right? So I don't know. I remember actually I went to they used to do this. It was called the Tour in Motion, and it was
Hmm.
seminars that would travel across the country, and I think they did Europe as well. But one of them was this guy Alex Bono, who was a lead cinematographer for SNL, and he was showing how you could use, this is a while ago, I think it was maybe like the C300 or something, and he was showing that, if you had to push into the high ISOs, you could. And he's like, listen, at the end of the day, if you're an embedded journalist, for example, in Iraq, and you're filming something, and here you have a general who's telling his entire sob story, and he's crying about all the bad decisions he's made, and you have a high ISO and it's kind of noisy. Well, who cares? As long as you can see him and you can see the tears, that's all that matters, So that's always kind of like stuck in the back of my mind. Like, if I don't have enough ND, I'm gonna just crank up my shutter speed. It's not the end of the world, and at the same time, I'm still gonna capture something important for the story.
100%. And I think that kind of people worry a bit too much about kind of getting it looking perfect and kind of getting it kind of, dialing in the image exactly how they've kind of been taught to. But like you said, it's more important to get the emotion and the story of what you're shooting than actually kind of worrying about settings that the audience probably won't even notice. Like you said, if you crank the shutter up, most people are not even going to notice that, and you're going to get, if it's a difference between you getting the shot and you missing the shot, then it's absolutely worth like doing whatever you can to get that shot, to get that emotion.
Totally.
Yeah, and so I know you also have an FX9. How has your experience been with that?
I love the FX9. I mean, hands down, it's probably the best camera, at least in that kind of realm, that I've owned. I enjoy using it. I think it has a great image. There's been a couple times in my career where I like upgraded to a camera and was like, hell yeah. I had the FS5 for a while, and I really enjoyed that camera because of its form factor, but the footage was, it left a lot to be desired, right? And definitely the codec in there was not very good. I remember I had the first FS5, and it had kind of these like creamy colors that I just did not like. So then I went and ended up getting an FS7 Mark II, and that's when I was like, wow, okay, this is a considerable difference in quality, and I was finally getting like that nice cinema image, and that I really liked the FS7 Mark II. It was a great camera. It was one of those cameras that I felt like, it was upgradable with a lens package. You put a different lens package on that camera, and it really made a huge difference and looked really good. But I missed the form factor. Immediately when I got the FS7, I was like, holy crap, this is a big camera, And then when the FX9 came out, the thing for me that was the real selling point was actually the dual ISO and obviously the Venice color.
You mean
for
like
me doing documentary work
kind of thing?
I mean, not really. I do use the S-Cinetone, and it's really cool, and it's nice to be able to, if you have a quick turnaround on something. But no, it's just more so that dual ISO, having that ability to, quickly go into a dark room and still capture something. And especially, again, for the type of work that I do with documentary style stuff, it's nice to have that tool in your bag and not have that really crappy low light, or the blacks being totally noisy and all that. That was one thing with the FS7. It was okay in low light, but as soon as it started to get dark enough, that camera was it wasn't very good. It was better than like the FS700 or the FS5, but the FX9 is ridiculous in low light and just has so much latitude in what you can do with the footage. I love the color science. And the full frame, it's a great camera.
Sure. And how did you find the image compares to the A7S III in terms of, I know you've mentioned that it's got the variable ND, it's got the XLR inputs and all those kind of lovely things that come with a cinema camera. But in terms of kind of the pure image, how have you found that it compares to the FX9?
So, the A7S III and the FX6, if they don't have the exact same sensor, they have a very similar one. And what I have found with the S3 is that out of the box, I mean, right out of the camera rather, the skin tones actually are a little bit better than the FX9. It
Okay.
takes a little bit more color grading with the FX9 to get it where it needs to be. But I still feel like the image quality of the FX9 is still much better. There's a lot more latitude even with the the CF Express card. Um, and I like the image quality better out of the FX9. But it was something that I noticed recently in our YouTube channel because we've been shooting S-Log 3 and grading it, and right out of the box, I don't know. I think there's something that seems a little bit off with the white balance of the FX9, and I think that that's what the problem is. I'm hoping that it's
Hmm.
something with a firmware update. But definitely, there's a little bit more of like a kind of not magenta, but reddish skin tones on the FX9. Whereas the A7S III, it's like pretty much perfect right out of the camera.
Did you watch the video that Potato Jet did, where he kind of compared the A7S III to the FX6?
No, I haven't seen it.
No,
No.
no. Basically, he found similar things to you. So he shot skin tones with the FX6 and the A7S III, and basically exactly as you said, the FX9. Getting all the models mixed up now. So the FX9 had that kind of magenta cast almost, and he said
Right.
that by looking at the vector scope, the A7S III was actually kind of the more honest color reproduction. So you would kind of agree with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And
Interesting.
so obviously with the FX6, it's kind of the same thing with the FX6. And I had an opportunity to play with the FX6. I think it was about 3 weeks ago now.
Hmm.
And it's a cool little camera. I mean, it's very small. It was surprisingly smaller than I was expecting. I mean, I had an FS5, and just when the pictures came out, there was that one picture that came out, and it was sort of deceiving. I mean, I was imagining a much bigger camera because I
Mm.
have the FX9. So it's cool. It's a cool little camera. There's a couple things that are a little, I kind of wish they had kept the eye viewfinder in the back like they
Hmm.
had on the FS5. I didn't always use that, but when I needed it, it was nice to have. And with such a small camera, having that loop on there, it's not. It's weird. It's weird to have a loop on such a small little body because the loop's almost as big as the camera itself, right? Um, and it is kind of weird to try to shoulder rig something so small as well. You can't really. You have to. I mean, actually, I don't know if I have it laying around, but there's that super cheap. Phil Bloom actually, I think, posted with it. It's a super
Hmm.
cheap thing that kind of fits over your shoulder and then sticks out in front of you, and that's probably the best way for the A7S and also the FX6 to kind of have it shoulder mounted.
Yeah, and like you said, it's quite deceiving when they release the marketing video. Sorry, the marketing photos of the cameras because they don't really have much to scale. Even if someone's holding it, you don't really get an ideal for the size of it until you actually get it into your hands and kind of feel how it feels in the hand. And yeah, from what I can
Right,
tell, and like from what you said, the FX6 it's an incredibly powerful camera for the size.
for sure.
And also, sorry, just before we go on, Bobby. Hi, Bobby. How's it going? Thank you for tuning in. Um, I'm speaking with Justin, and Walter's going to be joining us soon. We're going to be talking about the FX6, A7S, and FX9, and all those good things. So, any questions you have about those cameras, drop them in the comments, and we'll do our best to answer them. Yeah. So, you also said that you had like a pre-production version of the 16 to 35, the Cine lens that Sony just announced. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and your experience?
Yeah. So conversely to the FX6, that is a huge lens, first of all. It's incredibly well built, though. I'm excited that Sony is pushing forward with building lenses like that. I find that the 16 to 35 is a very weird range to have like a servo zoom
Sure.
lens. It's not really I do shoot with a 16 to 35 pretty frequently because I'm close proximity to a lot of stuff. So a lot of the stuff I'm shooting is on boats, and
Hmm.
you don't have. the ability to get far enough away to even like a 50 is tight on a boat, right? So 16 to 35 is a great lens on a boat, but still having like a rocker zoom. Unfortunately for me, I don't have the FX6 yet. I'm thinking I'm probably gonna buy it honestly, Mark II, to buy the FX6, but I've been kind of holding out, so we'll see what happens. But anyway, so I don't have that camera. I have the S3 and I have the FX. It's way too big of a camera to use with that lens in that capacity, right? It's just if you're trying to be on a boat and you need to be maneuverable, it's not the right lens for it, and it's also just not the right lens for what I use the FX9 for, right? It's not as far as a rocker zoom goes. The A7S, on the other hand, is actually too small of a camera, I feel like, to put it on. I guess if you built out your A7S III and you're using it in more of a cinema sort of or studio fashion, it'd be a good lens because you can easily manually focus it, manually zoom it, or it has the rocker zoom. But I do think that the 16 to 35 will be a great lens on the FX6 because it's a small ergonomic camera that you can get into tight spaces with and really use that lens kind of for that wide angle look and still get a cinematic look, right? And it has the rocker zoom. So I think that's nice. It's a nice setup for that. Image quality on that lens was great. The build quality was, it's definitely at a point now where it's impressive. Sony has kind of gone all over the place with their lenses over the years, and I think that these are really well done. I think that it's going to be useful for a lot of different productions, and I really hope that they come out with a different range. I hope that they come out with a 24 to 70, for example, with their servo zoom. I think that'd be like a great range. They can rehouse one of their 24 to 70 lenses, or even like a 70 to 200 with that type of setup that they had on that lens. I doubt that they'll do that because it'd be a massive cinema zoom lens, and I think would be challenging for them to put together. But they still could do a 24 to 70, and that's a great lens to have in anybody's tool belt.
Just lost you slightly, Justin. Can you just repeat what you just said?
Where did you lose me at?
Just go back a sentence.
Okay, yeah, I was just saying, I think the 24 to 70 range is kind of like the ideal spot to have that range in a servo zoom lens.
I guess, yeah, on the Sony side, you've only got is it the 28 to 135? They've got like a cine zoom.
28 to 135, yeah.
Yeah. Have you used that lens?
I use it often, but it's not very good quality.
Right,
it's okay. It's just it's a little bit soft. It doesn't really have a whole lot of character to it. But it's a good lens. It's very like versatile. The servo zoom is pretty good. It's the interesting thing is that 28 to 135 is actually quite old now. I mean, I think it came out with the A7S.
The original?
Yeah, the original.
Okay.
So, it's just there's some things about it that are a little bit clunky. It's much more fly-by-wire. They came out with the new, I think it's the 18 to 110 lens for the Super 35. That camera or that lens is actually a lot better. The quality was a lot better, and it had gears on it, for example. Oops, you're cutting out now.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So my internet's playing up just on the day I don't need it to. So.
Yeah. So tell me, why have you decided to do this channel?
So the channel was kind of motivated, as kind of people watching could probably understand, and maybe you yourself as well, kind of work kind of disappeared a little bit. So at the start of the year, it was really busy, and then kind of work just went downhill. So I want to start the channel to kind of, number one, keep my skills up, and number two, talk about all the things that I love, and number three, like we're doing now, engage with the community. So I think community is really important for videographers and filmmakers, that we can kind of link up, share ideas, share advice, and kind of look at each other's work and help each other learn and grow. So yeah, that was the main goals, but I'm kind of still trying things out. So I'm going to try and make this live thing every Friday, so people come along. We have a topic, but then kind of, you know, if the comments want to lead the conversation a different way, then that's cool as well. But I really want to make it like a community-based channel, so it's got my name attached to it, but I don't just want it to be about, you know, my stuff. I want it to be kind of like speaking to other professionals, speaking to kind of audio guys, After Effects guys, and just kind of really communicating that message that community is really important in kind of filmmaking and videography.
Right. That's cool.
So lofty goals, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Have you worked on YouTube much yet? Is this your first time?
It's my first time, yeah. So we've got a few people joining. So hi Jack, how's it going? Jack is from the UK as well, from Kent. We've got a question from Bobby.
What's up, Jack?
Bobby says, how flexible is the ProRes RAW on the A7S III? Have you guys tried it? How's the highlight roll-off? And does it feel like editing a RAW file? What are the limitations? Have you used ProRes RAW in there?
Yeah, I have, yeah. So, I think that, first of all, Premiere has had an update recently that gives you a little bit more flexibility in your tools for it. Mm-hmm. But what I'll say is that if you have the CF Express card, I would recommend just sticking with that. Mm-hmm. Because the ProRes RAW files are huge. And I really don't find too much of a difference between that and what you get inside the camera. I mean, it just doesn't, at least with the when you use the CF Express, and I'm trying to remember the settings on it, but the highest resolution, highest bit rate and all that on the CF Express card, that's a great quality footage right there, and a lot of flexibility in that. I have not really pushed the ProRes RAW, so in all fairness, I really couldn't really speak to that, but we bought the Ninja 5 and we started trying to use it, and we realized that we're just going to absolutely destroy our external storage. So we decided that that wasn't the route to go. And the truth was that I didn't really feel like there was that much of a difference in the quality. So next time we have a commercial or something, though, that we shoot, we'll probably use the Ninja 5, and that would be a good opportunity to sort of test it out, if we have it as a B camera or something like that. But yeah. I just don't really feel like it's worth it, like you're talking about, I mean, I think we had like I want to say a 20-minute interview, and it was like 250 gigabytes or something like that, just for a 20-minute interview. It was a lot. And just to be filling up your hard drives with that kind of stuff is crazy. It's insane.
Yeah, mate, definitely. Personally, I have used both ProRes and ProRes RAW briefly. So I did a project. It was a mini documentary shoot. It's basically like an interview for a mini documentary, and I was shooting. The director was shooting on the C200 in Canon RAW Light, and I was shooting on the A7S III. So I did some tests on the Ninja 5 before I went along to the shoot. I tried ProRes and ProRes RAW, but similar to what Justin said, like the sizes of the ProRes RAW on the A7S III via the Ninja 5 they're just massive. Like ProRes RAW is next level, but even ProRes in itself is like massive files. So I've got a 500 gigabyte card for the Ninja 5, and I think I calculated I could get like 20 minutes out of that. So yeah, you just end up spending a whole lot of money on kind of SSDs. And I know you can use kind of like cheaper ones and kind of put them in the housing yourself rather than use those little stubby ones, but it's still a massive cost. So Personally, I think I don't know what you think, Justin, but I found that the 10-bit files, the S-Log 10-bit in the All-I is enough for me. I don't really need anything more than that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
And yeah, so you said that you're thinking of pre-ordering the FX6. Have you made your mind up yet?
Yeah.
You have.
Um, well, for us, it would fit nicely in kind of our workflow because for us, we have a YouTube channel. Every Monday we come out with an episode. And the one spot where it'd make a huge difference for us, we have a couple shots. One shot where we go from outside to inside, and it would be really nice to have that auto ND on a gimbal to do that shot. So that's one situation where I could see it being really useful. And another is the fact that we're just doing these interviews outside, and I don't really want to put a matte box on the A7S III and to do these interviews. So it'd be, I think, well, with as far as a B camera for the FX9, to me the FX6 is a much better B camera than the A7S. But the A7S III for us is like, it's that camera that is very versatile and can travel with us in sort of situations where we have to pack really light. One thing I really love about the A7S III, and this is really important for me, is that it takes good photos finally. So the A7S II, the photos were not very good. But the A7S III, I mean, I absolutely love the photos that come out of that thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure we're going to get the FX6. Just kind of holding out to see what happens with COVID right now and what kind of business we have. These months right now, December, January, and February are usually notoriously slow. So, I'm not in a big rush to go buy a new camera when we have a pretty good workflow that works the way it does right now.
Yeah, and I think just generally, this year has been really incredible for kind of camera announcements. So you've had really big announcements from Canon and Sony, and then there was the Blackmagic 12K that came out, which is another
Right.
huge
Yeah,
step. So it's been a really good year for kind of camera announcements, but a really bad year for us because our work's kind of gone downhill. We haven't got as much money coming in, so you've kind of got all these really exciting cameras, but no money to buy them with. So yeah,
totally.
but I think yeah, use
Yeah.
what you have. Basically, use what you have, and yeah, like I've shot on really basic cameras, and clients they rarely tell the difference in my experience. I don't know about you.
No, the thing is that at the end of the day, it's really for us, right? It's like, first of all, you get excited when you have a new camera, and it may even inspire you to go create something. And also, it just makes our job a lot easier. I mean, obviously, having dual ISO and ND and you know fully variable ND and touch screen autofocus and all that stuff. I mean, it just makes our job a little bit easier. That's actually one thing I will say. When I was playing, first of all, when the FX9 got the firmware update for the autofocus, the touchscreen autofocus, I mean, I've used the Canons in the past, and I just thought like this is pretty clunky. It's like a real process to get there, as far as like setting up the touch screen to be autofocus. And then when the A7S III came out, it was like, well, okay, this is what it should be like. So I really hope that Sony is listening to people because I know that that's been something that a lot of people have mentioned to them. Um, and another thing that I noticed as far as like, so from what I understand is like Sony's sort of broken up into different divisions. You have Alpha and you have Cine, and they obviously collaborate, but they also build their own stuff and they
Hmm.
don't necessarily communicate everything. So, I think like the FX9 and the FX6, like I was saying earlier, I feel like that's a really good A/B camera combination. But there's a few things that I found interesting that didn't work together. So one is that the handle, for example, has the 3.5 millimeter jack on the FX6. I think that they should have tried to make those handles potentially work on either camera. And then I also
Does the FX6 even have
noticed.
a jack on there? I don't think it has a 3.5 millimeter jack, does it?
No, it does for the handle
Oh,
or
really?
whatever that
Oh,
adapter
okay.
is. Yeah,
I thought it was just XLR on
yeah.
there. I could be wrong.
No, not for you're talking. I'm talking about the little side remote handle there. It connects via like a little
Oh, I
3.5
see.
millimeter jack.
Got you.
Yeah. And then the other thing I noticed too is that the loop that goes on the FX9, which is not really the most high quality loop, but it worked. It doesn't fit on the FX6. I mean, maybe it does now because I was using a beta camera, but it's those little tiny details that I think make all the difference. It kind of makes you feel like Sony's building a product for you, with you in mind, and with if you were early adopter of the FX9 and they came out with the camera that's the B camera and it just fits together nicely with your original A camera. I mean, I think that those little details make a big difference to us camera operators. Um, and but I will say that Sony is really good at listening. That they put these cameras in the hands of professionals,
Hmm.
and when they send back the cameras and the lenses, that they do a good job of trying to take the notes from everybody. But it's got to be hard too. I mean, I hope to God that there's no Sony professionals who are in any of the Sony groups online, because I mean everybody's just, it's like some of the complaints on there, like I just don't really get it, to be honest. Like there's a level of complaining, I suppose, but um if your camera is doing a good job and making you money, then whatever. I can see some people who are frustrated with the fact that the S3 and the FX6 have autofocus and 120 frames per second with 4K, and the FX9 doesn't do that. But you know it's an older camera, and Sony's in the business of selling cameras, so it doesn't really bother me. I mean, sure, would I like to have those features? Yeah, that'd be nice, but it's not a make it or break it. And I still, if I needed an FX9 level camera, which I do, I would still buy the FX9 before I bought the FX6.
Hmm.
Even though that 120 is nice, it's not a deal breaker for me. I mean, and also having autofocus and the higher frame rates, while again, it would be very nice to have. I do a lot of Steadicam and gimbal work, and sometimes I'm doing that with a pretty low budget. So I don't always have an AC, and it would be nice to have, autofocus with either of those things, or even touchscreen. But yeah, I, I think that that's a great camera, and I don't really see the FX6 or the A7S III replacing the FX9 by any means.
No, and I think some of the complaints come from the fact that I think this year in particular, we've got so used to cameras that come with almost everything we want, and there's always like a limitation, like there's no 10-bit or there's like a 30-minute record limit. So this year, kind of like all of the camera companies, or just mainly Canon and Sony, have kind of just said you can have everything you've always wanted. So people are kind of nitpicking these tiny little things that could be better. Like I wish the A7S III had an ND filter, like a built-in ND filter. Like it's never going to happen. But
It's
I
never
think
going to
I
happen.
think this year in particular has kind of given people unrealistic expectations about what a camera can be. There needs to be kind of time for the companies to innovate, and yeah, the cameras this year have been like a massive leap. So like you said, Sony listen. And
Yeah.
in the past, maybe they haven't listened as much, but this year when they came, like similar to when they released the FX6 for your use case, for my use case, when they announced the A7S III, I was like, this is the camera for me. It's small. If I want to, I can rig it up. It does like 120 in 4K. It records unlimited. Yeah, I mean, we've just spoiled for choice this year, and I think that's what's kind of led people to kind of complain about these tiny little things that are really not that important. We've got a few questions, so I'm just going to dive into
Sure.
those. So starting with Jack, who says, A7S III, FX6 FX9, what would be the one lens you would choose to use on all three if you were back in a corner? So if you had to, which lens would you choose with all of them I'll let you answer this one because you've used them all.
Sony lens or
I'm guessing he means
any
Sony
lens?
lens.
Okay, gotcha. That's a tough one. I mean, I think that like if I was just starting out right now,
Hmm.
um, and I had to buy just one lens, your 24 to 70 is really the most versatile lens in most situations, you
Hmm.
know? If I, it'd be hard to say, for all three of those cameras to jump right into having that 28 to 135 because it is a slow lens and it's not the best quality. And, again, I feel like that 24 to 70, it's just it's very, very clean image lens. And, it's fast as a 2.8 and it's a good range, So I probably would say that the irony is I don't actually own a 24 to 70. But it's probably, one of the most versatile lenses, I think, in my opinion, for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I would.
Then,
Sorry, go on.
yeah, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to come in and say that in my experience, like shooting on the C200, Panasonic cameras, and now the A7S III, I think, yeah, the 24 to 70, it's quite a boring thing to recommend, but it's actually the most versatile lens, like especially if it's an f2.8, because if you go for like 24 to 105, it's more versatile, but you've only got the f4. So
Right.
I'd rather have the f2.8 and have the kind of 24 to 70, definitely.
Well, and actually, on that note, the 24 to 105 f4, with the fact that these cameras work so well in low light,
Hmm.
that actually is also not a bad recommendation as well. I think that if I had to recommend that over even the 24 to 130, or sorry, the 28 to 135, I'd probably recommend that one too over that. Um,
Sure.
if because mainly because I think the sharpness and all that, it's a good lens compared to the 28 to 135.
Sure. So, Jack, I hope that answers your question. So, we've got a question from Bobby who says, "What are your observations on the Sony FX6 dynamic range? I noticed that Gerald and Dunn tested it and it showed 13 stops, but it's advertised as 15." Just before I throw over to you, Justin, I'm just going to say a point on that. So, basically, camera companies, they quote a dynamic range, but it's usually like 2 or 3 stops over what the actual dynamic range is. So if you go to cined.com, they do a very good kind of dynamic range test. And basically, a rule of thumb is that you can kind of take the manufactured quoted dynamic range, so in this example, 15 stops, and kind of minus 2 or 3 stops, and that's kind of the actual usable amount of dynamic range. But just throwing over to you, Justin, because I know you've used the camera. What are your thoughts on the dynamic
Yeah,
range?
hardly though. Yeah, hardly. So
Sure.
honestly, I would kind of have to default to my experience with the A7S, which again if it's not the same exact sensor, it's very similar. Um, I find that it's a very good dynamic range with S-Log 3. There's definitely a little bit more again out of the FX9. I mean that's why I say although the skin tones come out of the FX6 and the FX or the A7S III a little bit better, I still find the image quality of the FX9 to still be superior. Whoops, here. Can you hear me? I can't hear you, buddy.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute.
There you go. You're back.
Rookie error. Rookie error. I was on mute. Yeah, sorry. I was just saying. Yeah, Bobby. I hope that answered your question. But like I was saying, kind of when people are given those pre-production models, they only have a little bit of amount of time with it. Is that right, Justin? So you've got like a week, and sometimes if you're busy during that week, then you might not have the time that you want with the camera. So we'll get Walter's opinion on that when he joins us. But let's move on to the next question. So. Uh, I can't pronounce that name. She says, in regards to picture quality, do you think FX9 is noticeably better than the FX6? And will the 3.0 update for the FX9 possibly bring 6K to make it even better? So just
I don't think 6K is going to be really in the near future for the FX9 unless they come out with the FX9 Mark II and then they come out with a Venice Mark II, which the Venice Mark II would have to be pushing 8K, and then the FX9 having, a new build, I think that would have the 6K. I don't know. Who knows? Sony always seems to have something up their sleeve, so I'm not going to rule out that the FX9 doesn't eventually have 6K. But as far as image quality, to answer that question, I think I mentioned it before. I do feel like the image quality out of the FX9 is still superior over the FX6 and the A7S III. Mm-hmm. There's more dynamic range. There's a lot more latitude in grading it. It's just from everything that I've seen now, and I can't compare the FX6 that well because I haven't shot with it a lot. But again, I think that as far as sensor and everything, it's very, very similar to the S3. So, in comparison to the two, but do they work well together? I mean, it's just such a beautiful match. I mean, shooting with the FS5 and the FS7, it was two totally different cameras, but I do feel like as far as the quality between the FX9 and A7S III, it's very close. And the same will be said about the FX6. I think you're muted again.
Sorry, I'm just using this new streaming software. Yeah,
that's all good.
Walter's just joined us, so I'm just going to bring him in.
Right on.
Walter, like I said, is a cinematographer from LA, and he's quite eclectic, and he's always posting projects. Like he'll say, I've got this new project, and every week he seems to be making a new series of videos, and yeah, he's just a really talented guy, and he makes these kind of crazy rigs, like out of the Sony A7S, the FX9. So I'm just going to bring him in now. Hey Walter, how's it going?
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, my boys. How are you? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, are you good?
Yeah,
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. Good morning to you both, and great to see you guys. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me so much. Sorry I'm tardy.
No problem. So just to sum up, we've been talking about the A7S III, the FX6, and the FX9. What's that lovely thing you've got on your shoulder right now? Let's have a look at that rig.
All right, how's the connection going? How's the latency? I want to, catch up with you guys' pacing. And how's the latency doing? Is it blurry or what?
Slight latency on the audio, but don't worry about it. It's fine.
All right. How's the clarity? Can you guys see me pretty clearly? Is it a little blurry or what?
Yeah, we can see you well.
Okay.
Talk us through the rig on your shoulder. What have you got there?
This is about, I'd say about 18 pounds of muscle right here. Let me know if it's blurry. I can clean my camera a little bit better if you guys need me to. This is the A7S III, and I had been listening to you guys for the past couple of minutes, so I definitely want to tap in with you guys about the dynamic range of this A7S III. But yeah, this is a special rig that I built here. We got the C200 base plate on some 10-inch, or actually these are 15-inch iris wooden camera rails. Underneath that is a cam tree dovetail, which I can remove from the small rig VCT14 if I want to take it off of my shoulder and kind of just have like a more stable base. 2 rosettes on the VCT14 just for kind of like keeping it down on my shoulder, less buoyancy. What's special about this rig to me is it's all powered on B-mount, but more particularly, we got it wrapped in the A7R4 cage, and we made a custom modification here. You might not normally see this, but there is a winning camera top plate on top of the cold shoe and the top side of the cage. So there's like an extra cheese plate on top, so I can run some 15mm rod rails forward for all kinds of other things, but I just got a NATO rail on top of that and the small HD 501 side finder, which is very, very, very articulate. I can just, pivot this any kind of way, get it towards my face, get it away from my face, and kind of just fold it out. Hopefully you guys can see it. Am I doing okay? Yeah. Fold it out and basically just have it on the shoulder. Let me back up a little bit so you guys can see. I'm gonna wrap this up really soon. But yeah, just on the shoulder, pivot it up, and then I can just look up into my viewfinder and still, direct my subjects and have a clear field of view. But yeah, I'm always building crazy rigs, crap for them online. But I tell you what, man, my rigs are like no other, and I really feel confident about my building. So yeah,
I would definitely have to agree with Balter there that he is the handle master.
Yeah, I've been given the nickname of Handle God online, and I'm kind of like, I think I'm gonna run with that a little bit, see what that does. But guys, real quickly, Sony did just send me one of 2 copies of the full frame Cine lens, Cine 16-35 T3.1. There's 1 or 2 in the world, and I've been blessed to have one. So thank you, Sony, if you've ever seen this. Really appreciate it. We've been doing extensive tests, lens flare tests, focus breathing tests, autofocus accuracy, reliability, and just all kinds of tests. And my girlfriend and I, she's sleeping right now. We've been putting together videos that we're going to put out in the next 24 to 48 hours, just on how we're covering using this lens, what it's capable of, how it compares to the 16-35. And this lens is a lens I never want to leave the house without. It's professional. It's power zoom I don't really use. I've actually taken it off, but just shooting at T3.1 wide open, there's just so much separation, and I really enjoy the autofocus, manual focus throttle on the front of the lens, so that you can kind of just pop in and out of the manual focus. The only thing I don't like about this lens, guys, is the focus hold button is kind of like, I don't know, I'd say a couple of inches away from the manual focus ring as well. So just focus holding can be a pinch if you don't have big hands. Other than that, yeah, just look forward for more reviews coming on the Cine lens. And you have the floor now, Jack. Go ahead.
Yeah. So also going back to one of the earlier questions, someone was asking about the FX6 dynamic range. And Justin was just saying that he's only had a short amount of time with it. So Walter, I was wondering if you've got a sense of kind of how the FX6 dynamic range is and how it compares to like the FX9 and the A7S III.
Yeah, well, I have the 9 behind me. I'm really excited about the 6 coming out. It's finally here. I'm excited to be. But in regards to your question, as far as dynamic range, Justin is going to be the man. I'm so glad he's here. We had a chance to chat about that before it came out, and I couldn't spill the beans. So I'm just super thrilled to hear about his experience with it, but I haven't personally had any experience with the FX6, but we will be getting that soon to complete the Trinity. So I can only speak right now about the A7S III and FX9 comparison, and only hope that FX6 really.
So to be clear, right?
Measures up to everything we've been seeing from these other 2 cameras.
Go ahead, Justin.
Right, Walter. I told you that. I told Walter I couldn't tell Walter very much because I was obviously sworn to secrecy, but I knew that he had a lot of requests that I was seeing in the FX6. So all I said to Walter is, "You're really gonna like this camera," because basically it's 3 in a cine body with the ND filters and all that. So it's a cool little camera. I mean, again, I had such a short period of time. I didn't really have the opportunity to fully test it. I was actually shooting with Sony, and I don't know when that video is coming out. There will be a video that comes out soon, and it's kind of a side-by-side comparison or not comparison, but they're trying to show that you really can use all these cameras together, which I believe in, and I think that that's another thing that on the groups and all that people sort of miss, that each of these cameras are for sort of a specific use. I mean, there are things that I need the FX9 for that I wouldn't necessarily use the FX6 for, but it is a good B camera 9, or the A7S III and the FX6 might be a good pair. And it kind of depends on your budget. It depends on what you're doing. and where it fits. So for example, the A7S III, like I was saying earlier, I do a lot of stills on the job, and you can't do stills with the FX6, so
Yeah.
you could do screen grabs, I suppose, but it's just not a stills camera. And that's the right camera for the right job, and the FX6 is the right camera for that job. So I could see somebody having an FX9 as their primary camera, and then using the FX6 as a gimbal camera. Or you guys saw they're flying the FX6 on FPV drones, which is really awesome. I mean, that's so cool that you can put that camera on there, and to have that ND built into it and everything. It just gives you so much latitude in what you use it for.
Yeah, it's a huge game changer, guys, with the ND. And, having an S3, if I could just chime in on what Justin was reiterating about the FX6, haven't had any personal experience, but having both of these cameras, it's really like a night and day, and it's like a per job basis. You want to think that they're great to just use in all situations together. But I tell you what, in my personal experience, once you've had the variable ND, internal, it just changes seamlessly. And for instance, when you have the A7S III, you got a cine lens on the front. For right now, I don't have any ND whatsoever, so I've been shooting a lot of things at f8, f5.6, f11, just to kind of get that look I'm going for without having an internal ND. So as we move toward the FA market, seeing these tests and actually having one myself, just really how it compares, because man, it's just nothing like having an internal ND. Once you have it, as great as this camera is, it just it can just really change the way that you shoot. And so having these two cameras together and then looking forward to the FX6. It's really never shot with an internal variable ND. Definitely get your hands on one, and you'll be able to see just how useful, how notorious it is, and just getting you the looks that you're looking for without having to worry about rigging things, without having to worry about having that color, other manufacturers NDs that you put on the front, the clip-ons. Just wanted to say that having a variable ND is just like, once you have it, as powerful as this camera is, I'd much rather have two cinema bodies, just because I've been building these rigs for a long time, and as I prepare my girlfriend to get ready to be more involved in my process, you just want to keep things simple. As great as these things look, things are always, you got to buckle things down, you got to tighten parts, be accountable for parts and cords failing and stuff like that. So just having that internal ND will just really, really change your day. And there's nothing like having all of the buttons on one body. So we're just really looking forward to adding that to the family, and kind of just using the A7S III as just like a not a throwaway, but just like a over-the-shoulder camera with this, so I can go into stills, get those slow motion shots really quickly handheld, since the stabilization on the A7S III is amazing, and then just being able to be cams to have like very, very similar results with not so much of a footprint.
I got a question for Walter.
Go ahead, Justin.
So, are you going to? Do you think that if when you get FX6, is it going to replace the FX9 for you?
Oh, no way, no way. Listen, the FX9, I'm going to get it tattooed on me. It's my first cinema camera. It's a beautiful machine. It's and here's when I say tattoo, the first thing I'm going to put on my body, guys, is, I don't know if you guys have this problem, but the ISO white balance and shutter in the bottom left corner, I know exactly where all of my buttons are on all my cameras, but when you become enthused about your own process, just knowing how to jump into what you're looking for, and without wobbling the camera, without introducing shape to the camera, those buttons have been a trigger for me. And so I think like maybe I'll put them like somewhere on my wrist or something, so I always remember. But no, it's not going to replace it. More than likely, I just want to give the FX6 to my girl, use FX9 on me personally, and have the A7 III across my body to with my girlfriend.